afternoon, and thank you for joining me. Just a quick question here. How many of you are QSAs? Excellent. And how many of you caught me in Toronto at the show in Toronto? Oh, just a few of you. Interesting. So I'm Derek Schenk. I'm CTO and co-founder of DataStealth. In addition to being a participating organization with PCI, DataStealth is also a level 1 service provider. So I have experience in doing the audits, going through the process, implementing, and just want to shout out to Corey and Control Gap. I think they're in here somewhere. Excellent, thank you. So our auditor, just if you're looking for an auditor or you want some great discussion, they're wonderful folks. So everybody knows March 2022, PCI 4 was announced. 321 expires 2024. 2025 is coming fast on us. We really only have about 18 months-ish left, and there's a number of new requirements coming out. So originally, I actually was going to go through some of these, and over the course of the last couple of days, I've shifted this a little bit, and actually I'm going to talk about our experiences with these requirements in PCI 4. And a little background on this, about 3 years ago, so our partners out in New Zealand, so Paul Grover from Confide, if you're here in the audience, they came to us. The issuers in New Zealand were starting to introduce additional controls that they wanted on top of the SAC A and other levels. And it's interesting that the controls they were looking for are basically the new controls that are coming out in PCI 4. So we've implemented this and we've rolled it out into production. And I've decided what I want to do is share with you our experiences with these requirements. So rather than telling you what you guys probably have heard a lot on some of these new requirements, rather than telling you what they are, I'm going to take you through our experiences with them. So the two new requirements that I'm going to focus on, I only got 20 minutes. For those that know me, I could talk for hours on this topic. So I'm going to talk about 643, which is the development side of the content protection, and then 1161, which is making sure nobody changes it. So 643, I'm not going to read this. You probably all know it. You probably heard it repeatedly. The interesting thing with this requirement for 643 is what we're seeing in practice. So as I mentioned, we've rolled this out in New Zealand. We've got customers in North America that are already implementing some of the controls here. And what we've seen is the interpretation around what it applies to. So it's not just frames. We're seeing scripts that are coming in. In New Zealand, payment redirects are considered to fall under this, and the controls are required to be in place for that. So the scope is not entirely clear yet. I did actually ask for a clarification on script inclusion, especially when we look to third and fourth party script inclusions. If you're including a third party script, the interesting question on this one that requires some clarity is what the responsibility is around that. So if I'm using, and by way of example, a tracking script, tracking clicks on the page, user analytics, that script has an ability to influence the payment page. And technically, it is in scope. And if I'm using a third party to provide that, I probably need an AOC from the third party, or else I need to assume responsibility for the integrity of that script. And since 6 falls under the secure content development, the expectation is that the integrity and where I start from is actually a secure script. So I'm starting to look there at what is my responsibility around making sure changes to their site and to their scripts falls under this requirement. So at first glance, everybody looks at this and says 643 is pretty easy. You've got content security policies, so I can control where the scripts come from, and I've got sub-resource integrity. So I can assign a checksum to a script and make sure an authorized source is loaded. What we've seen here is it's nowhere near this easy. So first, if you have a traditional application, your payment page and the remainder of your site, the cart, the marketing, it's all under the same domain. So when the CSPs are being added at the header level, the secure way to do it is to be able to define down to the scripts. These are the scripts that can be loaded. But what's happening is because of the number of scripts across the whole site, when the headers are added at the server level, all the domains are being added at a domain level. So this opens some risk that while CSP is going to make sure that the scripts are loaded from the right site, it's not making sure that every script is loaded properly. Sub-resource integrity turns out to be a significant management, resource-intensive management process. If you're using something like a single-page application, every time that you make a change to the application, a copyright notice, a date, when the application is recompiled, all the scripts change, which means all of your tags for the SRI and all the checksums have to be calculated each time. So what we've discovered is it's not a simple page change. Marketing tends to want scripts and things that are included in the page, and the discussion with the marketing team as to why you can't put that in and what the implication is isn't easy. Developers want to use CDNs. They want to load content off third parties. Trying to explain why that potentially is a problem when the requirement specifically states third and fourth party content and scripts that are loaded are also part of your scope. Legacy applications, it's great to be able to add JavaScript to a page or to do something, but if you use a third-party product, a legacy product, the technical debt, the going to your development team and saying, I want you to make changes to this application, it's a significant effort. So we're seeing that in our deployments, CSP and CSP, while they're solutions, they're not really getting implemented. And the last thing that we're seeing is they're great solutions when they're there. But because the browser just wants to load the page and serve content, if the CSP is missing, the page loads. If the SRI tags are missing, the script gets loaded. And that actually moves us into what the intent of requirement 11.6.1 is. So 11.6.1 is falling under the network monitoring security side of the requirements. And this is where we're looking for the changes that are happening. How are we detecting the tampering? A couple of things that are interesting here is you'll note that 6.4.3 is focused on the scripts, but this requirement is actually calling out the content of the page, which means we're starting to look at not just the scripts that are in the page, but actually the page that is hosting the iframe, the scripts, the content, and the headers. If you look at the guidance for this particular item, it's actually interesting. There's a note that specifically says the intent of this requirement is not that somebody would add something that runs on the browser side. So you're expected to confirm the integrity of the headers, the scripts, and the content as they're received by the browser, but the intent is that you're not actually supposed to put something in that loads client side. So it creates an interesting, how do you solve that requirement? As we look to the traditional ways or the common ways we're seeing this, browser scripts. We see a lot of browser scripts. It's an interesting problem because first, the requirement, the intent is saying, don't run something on the client side, but we're also using a script to try and check the integrity of the scripts. It's kind of who's watching the watcher. So now what am I putting in place to make sure that the scripts that are supposed to be watching the scripts are actually watching it properly? Right? So it's kind of an inception problem there. So now you're bringing in a second thing that you have to take a look at. If you're loading those scripts from a third-party site, go back to that original 6.4.3 issue of, are you now responsible for making sure that the site that you're loading it from, that product that you're loading it from, is PCI compliant? Do they have an AOC? Are they providing this for you? You know, it's, as I said, I put a question forward on that to try and get clarification, but I don't have an answer on that. So the other is you can do periodic scans. You can scan and report on it. It works. The challenge on this one, and I think we've seen this happen before, is an alert comes in, and if you think about what's going to happen and what we see in production is a change. Sometimes the change was unintentional. Copyright notice was changed and they didn't think about it. Sometimes the change was intentional but didn't go through change management. And as soon as that happens, the dashboard lights up. Because you go from everything is green to every single page is now starting to drive this. So managing the influx of all of that and dealing with what you're supposed to do, what usually happens is ignore. Friday afternoon, I'm going home for the weekend, I'll deal with it on Monday or Tuesday, and you're serving potentially malicious content, you're serving unauthorized content for a period of time. So I talked at the beginning about our experiences. I want to talk a little bit about how we address this, what we do. So DataStealth is, as I mentioned, a PCI Level 1 service provider. We offer products that help with scope reduction. We also offer a service in addition that allows us to take on some of these responsibilities for you and assume the scope of some of these items. DataStealth deploys as a network appliance. If you think of how you would deploy your WAF, how you would install it, how you would put a content delivery network, the deployment is the same. I would go into something like Cloudflare, change the origin to DataStealth, it would continue on to the original site, and now your deployment's done. DataStealth is in the line. As I mentioned, I could talk a lot on these. There's a number of services that we provide, and I just wanted to pick on a couple to talk about. I'm not going to do a live demo. Live demos for me never go well. So I've got a couple screenshots here. If you're interested in seeing this live, down on the vendor showcase floor, catch me outside, catch me down there. Happy to take you through and actually show you this in action. But essentially, to address these two requirements, as content is coming from your site down to the client browser through DataStealth, we're doing a real-time integrity check. We're essentially doing the same thing as the CSP or the SRI would be doing, but we're doing it without the browser involved, without anything on the client side. There's no development changes, there's no code, there's no scripts, there's nothing that happens on the server-side application, and we've done deployments where the application owners don't even know we've been installed in line. Nothing happens on the browser side, really doesn't matter what they support, it happens on the wire. So as that page is coming back through, we're looking at it, we're removing dynamic elements, we're fingerprinting the content of the page, the scripts, things like that. And if anything changes, anything is not right, we can immediately send the user to your branded, your customer error page. Sorry, we can't process your transaction right now. We can also just simply log it. We can log and send to an error page. When we provide this as a service, the instant this happens, the very first instant this happens, first page, nobody gets malicious content, nobody gets unauthorized content. A P1 severity alert comes into our NOC. They jump on this, work with the customer. In practice, what we see happen, and this probably shouldn't be the case, but probably won't shock anyone, 12 o'clock, 11:30 at night, we get a high severity alert from a customer that says, we forgot to tell you, we did a change. We're doing a deployment in 30 minutes. Help us out. Or even worse, we did a deployment, we forgot to tell you, please work with us on the content change to put this in. So again, back to that experience on deploying this, the integration between the development change and what's changing and the operations side and the approval process, it's a highly resource intensive process. And while there's a lot of focus on what it takes to initially get the pages, the content, things like that, there isn't a lot of focus yet on what it's going to take to keep that current moving forward. Header integrity checks, essentially the same thing. We're looking at all of the headers as the pages are going by. We're looking for unauthorized changes. The other thing that we're able to do is if you're dealing with an application that you can't make changes to or third-party legacy systems, DataStealth is able to add these headers for you on the way through. So we can do some uplift on the security, add the strict security controls and other things. And again, the same behavior. If there's changes made to the headers, alerts send you to an error page. Moving beyond these requirements a little bit, it would seem, but there's actually a tie-in, is we call it transparent security injection. I'm not in marketing, so when they let me come up with names, this is the sort of thing you get. This is the ability, as the content is going by, to make modifications to it and to uplift it. So common one we would do is, as the script goes by, we can rewrite the target from a third party to an authorized content store. So you're bringing that script back in. So instead of loading it from CDN or from GitHub, you're bringing it back to an authorized source. We can add the integrity checks to it. There's an interesting nuance with this, specifically when it comes to iframes and script inclusions on pages, which is the requirement for 643 says that the pages that are responsible for the URLs, I'm not getting the wording exact, so don't hold me to it, but the page that drives the URL that takes you to the third-party payment service is what's in scope. So what DataStealth is able to do is have the customer take out the tag, the iframe, the script load, and replace it with a non-HTML element that says, put the frame here. As the page goes by, DataStealth will, from our secure content repository, and PCI audited, will inject that content into the page on the way through. So we're the ones that are actually putting the URL and the target in as it goes down to the browser. So we can help on the scope side of that, of removing some of the responsibility or the scope applicability downstream. Got to get the word right on that. We do tokenization, inline tokenization. Again, transparent card tokenization. I love the word transparent. It happens on the wire. We are able to do this for forms. So if I have a form that takes a card, DataStealth sits in front. If you're using traditional tokenization service, what's going to end up happening is the card comes to you, you're going to call tokenization, your app is still in scope. You're still bringing pieces into scope. By using DataStealth further upstream, the card comes in, we tokenize it, the token is then sent internally through your application. We also support other protocols, FTP, SFTP, and a myriad of others. And as the file is being sent to your payment processor, on the other side, we're able to transparently, real-time detokenize it as well. We also can do frame injection inside, which actually takes it a little further, where the card tokenization is directed to a DataStealth service, which actually handles the tokenization. The page itself never actually sees the card, and neither does the application. And the token is put into the form and submitted. The last one I wanted to touch on, and this actually hasn't gotten a lot of airtime at this conference. I haven't seen a lot about this, but there is a requirement in section 12 around CDE, defining your CDE, and a little bit of a shift from defining what is in scope to proving what is out of scope. So we have a number of card discovery services. Using our inline awareness of how protocols work, we have a large library of things that we can connect to. Databases, structured, unstructured, file servers, cloud services, on-prem, and more. For some customers, we're even down into obstetic files off a mainframe and legacy systems to go looking for information. So as I mentioned, I love to talk about this. If you're interested in more information, if you would just like to talk about our experiences with this, feel free to come down and see me. Email's here. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to set something up. Thank you for your time today. I don't want to keep you long. Thank you.